Hello everyone. Welcome to today's study, Spiritism Inspiring Lives. Let's start our meeting harmonizing ourselves. All of us who may be here, all of those who maybe join us in this unique and special moment in our existences. Choosing to calm our minds, our hearts, and also bring the focus of our attention to this moment, relaxing our muscles, perhaps doing some breathing exercise that helps us to calm down, focusing on the background music, which will help us to center. And in that special, unique space within, let's start this meeting expressing our gratitude towards everything and everyone in our existences, for the multiple opportunities for us to evolve. Expressing gratitude towards life, towards the experiences that the universe presents to us. And with our hearts full of gratitude towards ourselves, towards others, towards the creator of everything and everyone, God. Under the blessings of His unconditional love, we start this meeting today. And once more, feel welcome, all of those who maybe join us throughout today's study. As we initially refer to, today our study is Spiritism Inspiring Lives. And the topic specific will be forgiveness, the cure to intolerance. Surely is a relevant topic for all of us to learn a bit more. And in order to facilitate this topic today, we have the presence of our friend, Spiritist from England, Thais Ferrari. She also is a senior biomedical scientist at the Darien Valley Hospital. Thais, feel welcome to the Spiritist Psychological Society. And we also say, even at the beginning, thank you for your cooperation in be present in this moment to facilitate this team cooperating for our own healing. So in that way, we invite you and hand it over to you. Thais Ferrari.
Hi, Eunice. Hi, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to be here. And the topic today is forgiveness, the cure to intolerance. But before we start our reflections, I would like to take a look at the meaning of the words forgiveness and intolerance. So according to our friend, the dictionary, intolerance means lack of tolerance, unwillingness or refusal to tolerate or respect opinions or beliefs contrary to one's own, unwillingness or refusal to tolerate or respect persons of a different social group, especially members of a minority group. And then we have other types of intolerance, like intolerance to heat and things like that. But we will focus on the meaning of the tolerance that acts, that lacks patience, care, respect, empathy, love, and forgiveness. So the intolerance towards one's beliefs, to what is different than ours, And that can include religion, politics, sports, sexuality. So any options, any choices that differs from our own. And then I would like you to ask you to reflect with me why some of us are so against one's choice when it's different than ours. What is the root of intolerance? And how would our surrounding look like if we were more tolerant with ourselves and with others? Let's also think how many wars have we seen or are still happening because of intolerance? How many crimes has been committed due to the intolerance for not accepting someone else's opinion or choice? How many crimes have been committed because of a lack of forgiveness? And how many people have chosen to take their own lives because of intolerance against themselves, like bullying, for example, or even due to the lack of self-forgiveness? So before we go any further, let's also look at the meaning of forgiveness. So the act of forgiving, state of being forgiven, disposition or willingness to forgive. And what is forgive? To grant pardon for or remission of an offense, debt, etc., or absolve. To give up all claims unaccounted of, to grant pardon to a person, or to cease to feel resentment against, so to forgive one's enemy, to cancel an indebtedness or liability of. So in this case, to forgive the interest on a loan, more financial, isn't it? But that's not the one we're going to be looking at. I will leave the reflections about forgiveness for later because I would like to start talking about intolerance. So intolerance is the characteristic of the intransigent individual. This was taken from a journal in 2018, but it's not much different than what it is now. Although intolerance is not new, current events suggest that we live in especially intolerant times. People are intolerant of migrants, refugees, and various minority groups, along with the culture and religious practice they engage in. There is intolerance of viewpoint diversity, resulting in disinvitations, deplatforming, firings, intimidation, and violence towards ideologically dissimilar people. So we learn with Spiritism that the origin of intolerance and all other vices come from pride and selfishness. These are the root of our shadows. So in the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 10, I'll quote it here, it is undeniably that pride leads man to conceal his own defects, both moral and physical. So how do we recognize pride? So it can be recognized when I think that everything that I believe is better. For example, my religion, my doctrine, my football team, my culture, my sexual orientation, any of my choices are better than anyone else. It stops us from having empathy, from putting ourselves in someone else's shoes. And putting ourselves in someone else's situation is an emotional function that require development. And when this is developed, we can contribute with what will in the future be the universal fraternity. So how can I recognize intolerance? In me, first of all. So in the practical manual of Spiritism, we find that intolerance can be expressed in many different ways. And I'm just going to highlight 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points here. So austerity is an example of intolerance. And this attitude can be towards the behavior or obligation of others in a family, in a professional, or in a social situation in general. Exaggerated severity, and almost always losing emotional control, and then violently reprimanding someone, or sometimes even ourselves, that because we made a mistake. So we can also recognize intolerance through harshness and mistreatment. So harshness in the determinations, in decisions taken in relation to someone's penalty towards someone that has made a mistake, for example, or even harshness and mistreatment towards those with whom we live, acting harshly and radically. So incomprehension in the faults of others, so the lack of empathy or understanding of the infractions that someone may commit or have committed, condemning them with no chance for them to explain themselves, being aggressive and derogatory, and having derogatory judgments. And it can also be recognized by pleasure in denigrating others, when we take pleasure in evidencing especially the other mistakes or weakness. Another point is that an intolerant person have difficulty forgiving. He does not forgive. He lacks moderation in his consideration to others. Usually they can only see the darkness in people or in themselves. There's a lack of patience is also a predominant aspect of an individual who is intolerant. The sense of critique is very strong, and in their point of view, who makes a mistake must pay for it. So why are we so intolerant? So we see the speck in our neighbor's eye and fail to see the plank in our own. We like to comment only on the unpleasant and unkind side of people, and it even gives us pleasure sometimes. And then could we unconsciously be projecting onto others what we hide most from ourselves? Wouldn't we then be highlighting in others that we don't have the courage to face within ourselves? There's this quote from Martin Luther King Jr. that I really liked, and I thought it was quite appropriate for this topic today. He says that darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So intolerance is a symptom indicating that something very serious needs to be amended, needs to be corrected within our own being. Why do we demand perfection from those around us and we are complacent with our abuses? So as a healthcare professional, I can't stop myself but look for links of how behaviors impact in our physical and mental health. And as a spiritist, how does it impact my moral and my spiritual development? So intolerance can have a negative impact on your mental health. It can lead to feelings of anxiety, depression, and stress. Chronic stress can also lead to physical health problems such as high blood pressure, heart disease, and etc. Many traumas, such as violent crime, domestic violence, rape, child abuse, car accidents, and the effects of war, are perpetrated by one person's or group of people. Pain inflicted by others, from minor slights and insults to the most horrifying experience of brutality or betrayal, can have lasting negative health effects. Studies revealed that forgiveness improves psychological and physical health through decreasing anger and hostility. So, intolerance shows a sign of control. We want to be in control of what the other think or may do or believe. And when this is different from what we do, we think or we believe or what we expect, it can lead to anxiety, to depression, to dissatisfaction, to anger, stress, to violence. And all these affect our health, our mood, the way we treat others, our relationship with the ones around us, with the society. And let's not forget that we are integral beings. We are body and spirit, so it affects our spirit as well. So now that we have a slightly idea of how harmful intolerance can be, let's move on to talk a little bit about forgiveness. And we have a quote from Bezerra de Menezes, his Enlightened Spirit, that leaves us a beautiful recipe here for us. So live this existence with your soul full of hope and forgiveness. Even to the one who seems not to be worthy of forgiveness, forgive, because it will do you good. The divine justice, in its own way and term, will accomplish the offender's rectification. So it's not up to us to want to punish someone or ourselves for making a mistake or for doing something that we don't agree with. So as we reflected, before we go any further, sorry, there's another quote from Gandhi that I would like to leave it for you. So your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. And now, as we reflected on the health-related behaviors of intolerance, I would like as well to reflect on the health-related behaviors of forgiveness and how developing this virtue can improve our health. And these studies that I will show here was taken from a paper called Forgiveness by J. Adam. So increased numbers of studies have demonstrated that forgiveness positively influences a number of physical and mental health outcomes. So one of the impacts is in longevity. So reviews that in 2012 conclude that conditional forgiveness of others is associated with reduced risk for all-cause mortality. And the mortality risk of conditional forgiveness may be conferred by its influence on physical health. It also influences our vital signs. So simply imagining oneself granting forgiveness alters physiology. Blood pressure is lowered, heart rate decreases, and skin conductance changes. It also has an impact in our immune function. So self-forgiveness is associated with decreased blood viscosity and improved ratios of helper T to cytotoxic T white blood cells. These are cells of our immune system, our defense systems. Also impacted our brain function. Forgiveness has been found to influence the function of neurons in the lateral and ventromedial prefrontal cortex and temporoparietal junction, and impact our mental and emotional health. So people who are more inclined to forgive seem to experience less stress. They are less likely to experience depression and anxiety, not to mention post-traumatic stress. In women suffering from spouse emotional abuse, forgiveness therapy was found to also lower depression, anxiety, and stress, and to improve self-esteem, emotional intelligence, and the ability to find meaningful meaning in suffering. So forgiveness improves mental health, in part by decreasing the tendency to ruminate, and it probably improves social relationships as well. Other aspects of improvement is the sleep and pain. So in 2019, a review found that both forgiveness to others and self-forgiveness were associated with better sleep. Also, chronic pain. 7 studies found an inverse association between forgiveness and participants' overall levels of pain, as well as improvement in pain tolerance. Forgiveness has also an effect in cardiovascular. It is associated with lowering cardiovascular risk, possibly because of decreasing anger and hostility. It has even been linked to improvements in lipid measures as cholesterol measures, and found to have the opposite effect to anger when it comes to cardiac functions measures. Any substance use disorder. So forgiveness has been shown to decrease anger, depression, anxiety, and vulnerability to drug use in people with a history of substance abuse. So we also see studies about oncology and palliative care with other chronic health conditions as well, and other health benefits. And we cannot forget that these aspects that positively impact in our health also applies for self-forgiveness. Other important examples of self-forgiveness studies that found include that self-compassion or self-forgiveness decrease the relationship between traumatic event and levels of self-harm or suicidal thoughts. Self-forgiveness can be an important aspect of recovering from eating disorders as well. Some conditions such as fibromyalgia syndrome are associated with decreased forgiveness of self and others. And self-compassion, which is closely linked to self-forgiveness, also has been found to have many health benefits. So here we can see, just by looking at the physical aspects, how can forgiveness affect our health, and by doing so, feeling better about ourselves and about others, it also improves our tolerance. And we cannot forget that our physical is direct linked with our spiritual health. We are one. So we reflect in previous slides what type of behaviors an intolerant individual would present, and how the anger, the lack of control, the impatience could affect the health. Therefore, by learning to forgive, we are also learning to be tolerant. So how do we get there? What does it require? It requires courage. It requires strength. empathy. So where you start reflecting, why the person that the offender have done what they did, or why I have done what I did. Why have they chosen what they chosen? Can something from their past or present life explain their actions? Think about my or their spiritual moral development. Or even if I'm being intolerant, thinking about my own preconceived ideas. Why do I think that I'm right and everyone else is wrong? Altruism. How is doing this forgiveness, this exercise, the developing this virtue, this how this can be a gift to myself and to others. Persistence. It needs to be committed to forgive. And so many virtues that we develop along the way as we are learning to forgive. It's needed repetition as well. Humbleness without a doubt, and self-awareness. So who do we have as a module that we can follow? Jesus Christ. And a brilliant example can be seen in John 8, 1 to 11. So let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. So that's an excellent example that Jesus left us. It was about the adulterous woman, where the people expected her to be punished and brought her to Jesus. In that sin, there is intolerance from a cultural perspective. And Jesus, there, with his intelligence, proposed to follow the law, but make those that are present to reflect. If you were the person to be punished, how would you feel? What kind of feeling do you have that you believe you can apprehend this act? And without judgment, but asking everyone that was present to see their own shadows before looking at the other, getting people out of their fixed ideas, their ego and their pride. And when we can finally see what is in us, we talked about self-awareness, selfishness, pride, barriers that we put us, that we create, that we separate ourselves from others, perhaps to make us feel better, to make us feel good, to make us feel part of something. But when we realize this, we can then have empathy to others. Then we can get out of these preconceived ideas, these mono ideas where I'm the only one that is right. This way we learn to be more tolerant with others because we are going to disarm ourselves. And it takes humility to recognize this, humbleness. And in essence, we are all interconnected. We are all very close as humanity. We are all very similar in our moral and intellectual evolution. And that's why we are all here reincarnated together in this world. So what is forgiveness and how to forgive if forgiveness is the cure to intolerance? So in this slide, we see the forgiveness process, a summary provided by Menninger in 1998. And I found it quite interesting the way that he highlights the steps helping people to forgive. And hence why I brought this process here. So on the that he highlights the general steps in the process, which are listed in the column on the left, 1 to 5. Then the boxes in the middle, he lists the major obstacles to forgiving. And then on the right, he puts some actions to take to achieve this forgiveness. So if we started from the left, number 1 is recognizing the need to forgive. And in here, he puts steps that can be obstacles to recognize this need is self-blame or denial. And then how can we identify what needs to be forgiven? And he puts steps as what needs healing, who and what must be forgiven, the effects of the injustice, how the event affects current behaviors that I have or that a group of people may have. And then second, acknowledge and release emotions. So self-forgiveness. And what are the obstacles to that? Fear. Remember we said is needed courage. Vengefulness, unworthiness, guilt and shame, anger and hatred. And then the actions to be taken is cease to identify with what hurts. Consider a support group. Consider counseling and therapy. Break the habit of using the insult to shape new relationships and interactions. And move from self-pity to positive outrage that can motivate change. Third, it might be the most difficult one, which is the choose to forgive. And all these steps in the middle can be obstacles to choose to forgive. And all boxes on the right can be actions that you can take when you choose to forgive. But until we choose to forgive, we won't be able to look at this and act on this. So fourth, change old beliefs and patterns. Obstacles can be escape the role of victim, change defense mechanisms, and take away perpetrators' powers. And how can we do that? Redefining relationships with the person who caused the pain. Consider a place of reconciliation. Release the control the person and injury have had. And support others who are suffering as well. We learn so much from others by helping others, by listening to others. We learn a lot. Fifth, emerge into greater holiness. This is a personal process which must be tailored to each one's needs. And each individual must define and follow the path that works for yourself. So self-awareness. And we go from suffering to forgiveness. So forgiveness is a transformation of our emotions, our feelings towards what has happened in order to increase our inner peace and understanding. Let's put this way, it has been said that holding on to vengeful anger is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. So it's a path to freedom where you can be true to yourself, release your emotions and recognize these emotions. Not releasing by acting, I'm angry so I'm gonna hit, not this, but recognizing that emotion exists. Don't deny what you're feeling. Just thinking about forgiveness is not enough. You have to choose to forgive and releasing these emotions. Working in these emotions, working in forgiveness. And first and foremost is done for yourself. Choose not to be the victim anymore. Break old patterns, old habits that can interfere with you being able to build new relationships. And it can take a long time. And one to help with forgiveness that I find it quite useful, I would say, is to be able to maintain a certain psych distance from the problem or the discussion, as well as the mental dialogues that are constantly going on in our psyche, in our mind, because we are emotionally engaged in unbalanced involvements. And in many occasions, we elaborate exaggerated interpretations, and we fall into impulses that make it harder to forgive. And it's only by disconnecting from the aggression, from these thoughts, from the disrespect that has occurred, that we can tune into different vibes. Is a process called renewal of mental atmosphere or change of tune. And praying is always an effective method to restore this feeling of peace and serenity, to change this tune. So Apostle Paul, in a message inserting the gospel according to Spiritism, states that to forgive your enemies is to ask for forgiveness for yourself. To forgive friends is to give proof of friendship. To forgive the offense is to show that one improves. Forgive, therefore, my friends, that God may forgive you. For if you are hard, demanding, inflexible, if you hold even a slight offense, how do you want God to forget that every day you have a great need of indulgence? So now that we looked into the health-related aspects of forgiveness and how can we forgive, how can we work towards this virtue, and how it's so related to intolerance, I would like to um, look at what is forgiveness by looking at what is not forgiven. And then I'll use a help from some reflections that I heard from Rosand Klinge, a psychologist from Brazil, that helped me a lot to expand these reflections. So first, forgiveness is not to diminish or approve the error. So, when you say, no, it's okay, you made a mistake, it's not a problem, it's okay. Is it? If it's all right, if it didn't hurt you, you wouldn't have to forgive. Sorry, my cat just came into the. Sorry. So if it's all right, if it didn't hurt you, you wouldn't have to forgive. If you if you would just end nothing, you wouldn't have to feel the need to forgive. So be honest with yourself and to the other person in this process. The truth is, yes, you hurt me, and I will not minimize what I'm feeling. So second, forgiveness is not allowing the error. So forgiveness is not allowing that something wrong happens or continue to happen. Forgiveness is not being tolerant to everything, tolerant to someone's being abusive, tolerant to someone being racist, being, well, showing a behavior that you know is not right, morally not right. So forgiveness sometimes is confrontation, is not connivance. Sometimes conflict, reprimand, a sincere conversation, it's necessary for the truth to be established. So third, not wanting for the other to ask you for forgiveness. This is not forgiving. So don't wait for the other to admit that he or she has hurt you. Forgiveness must come without waiting for the other to ask you for forgiveness without waiting for the other to recognize that they made a mistake. And many times, this forgiveness must be done in silence without telling the other. Imagine you go and tell the person that you have forgiven them, and they turn and say, "Why? I did nothing wrong," or "I don't want you to forgive me." So, forgiveness is not forgetting. In fact, you have to remember and acknowledge, and that's again go back to what is needed, courage, because sometimes things happens and is very, it hurts a lot and we want to forget, we don't want to go back to it, and then we bury those feelings on us, but it's there. So in fact, forgiveness, to forgive, you have to remember, you acknowledge the negative emotion that the event brings before you can forgive. You won't forget, and the idea that you have to forget, otherwise you have not forgiven, it's it's a violence to your own feelings and sentiments. To forgive is to resignify that event. It's forgetting the emotion, the feeling of anger, of revenge, the hurt, and not to ruminate what happened. But the event, we do not forget. Number 5, forgiveness is not stopping the pain. Sometimes we think that forgiveness will stop that pain, the feeling that hurts, that pain. And this thought will lead us to think that because the recollection of certain moments still brings us pain, and we think this means that we have not forgiven yet. But this is not true. That's not necessarily true. Forgiveness is not stopping the pain. It does not stop. So many things can happen in someone's life that is painful, and it can take years, sometimes a whole reincarnation or even more to stop hurting. But it does not mean that we haven't forgiven who causes that pain. Some event leave us marks for a long time, and if you don't feel the need of revenge, the anger, and you can manifest care and love and wanting the good to that person, you have forgiven. So forgiveness is not negligence. So you forgive and you call the police. You will not let that person continue to make the mistake and harm others. Forgiveness is not being omissive. 7, forgiveness is not to forgive is not to trust. And that can sound harsh, but I'll explain what I mean by that. What is the guarantee that the person will not repeat the error? Imagine someone has been abused when they were a child. You have forgiven that person. You would let that person look after your own child? No, you wouldn't. Trust is built slowly, but is broken in seconds. And it takes time to reconstruct that trust. And then just one more reflection, that forgiveness is not always reconciliation. And why do I put that? Because you need 2 parts for the reconciliation to happen. And sometimes you may have forgiven that person, but the person does not even recognize the error, or don't want to be forgiven, or don't want to forgive you. So it's not always a reconciliation. So let's forgive to free our soul from that feeling that has already passed and leave us open to new experience. Let's forgive to be healthier. Let's forgive to be kind, to be gentle. Let's forgive to be more tolerant and open to more experience, to new beliefs, to new thoughts. So Joanna de Angelis, I'll leave a quote here from Joanna de Angelis. I found it brilliant. Is the individual who forgives himself has an easier time forgiving others, working on acceptance, difference, and growth. We live in a society. And why do we live in a society? God chose us to live in a society to grow. And Joanna Jones, for me, put it beautifully here that working on acceptance, difference, and growth. That's what we learn by living in a society. But for us to learn what she's saying here, we must be open. We must learn to be tolerant, humble, have courage, forgive. So there's another slide that I would like to leave it here, and this is found in Matthew 6:14. For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. Again, it goes back to what we read before in the Gospel according to Spiritism, where we ask God for indulgence every day. And this is just the reference from some of the quotes that I've taken here to help us with this reflection, this discussion today. And God bless you all today and forever. Thank you for listening. And I will hand it back to Evanice now.
Hello, Thais. Thank you very much indeed for your presence, and all of us from the Spiritist Psychological Society express our gratitude towards you who reserved your time, shared your knowledge with all of us. Thank you very much indeed. And in that way, we are coming to the end of this reflection moment, and we invite everyone to conclude this part with the final prayer, giving thanks to God, the creator of everything and everyone in the universe, for our lives, for our families, for everything what we have, for our experiences that we consider good, the experiences that we consider bad, understanding that all the experiences that we attract to our existences, to our pathway of evolution, are good in a sense of promoting our intelligence, our ability to love more than we learned already so far. Our gratitude for our parents to be instruments that allows us to be here once more in this great school earth, in this great hospital where we find ourselves, to learn to heal ourselves, as we have been invited through the reflections today. Our gratitude for our professions, our work, our homes. Our gratitude for all those which we are sharing our lives, our existence with. Great opportunities for us to promote self-love. Our gratitude for us to be learning in this country, which welcomes us, or all of those in the different countries where they found themselves. So with our hearts full of gratitude, tenderness, kindness, we also express our gratitude for the enlightened spirits who have been with us throughout this study, inspiring all of us, incarnates and all of those in the spirit who are with us, to reflect within ourselves. Our gratitude for their love, the blessings of their love towards every and each one of us, helping us to strengthen us, for us to carry on our journey of learning and learners as we all are, of the divine science presented within Spiritism, helping us to look within as immortal beings as we are, essentially beings of goodness and love. And in that way, With great thank you, we conclude this meeting and wish you much peace to everyone, today, tomorrow, and always. So be it.